The local history of Greenville County, South Carolina is visible in the repurposed textile mills, historic mill houses, wide fields, and agricultural properties, as well as the early 20th century commercial-style architecture of the historic districts throughout the cities that dot the county. Outside of the rich textile history, Greenville bears the weight of fledgling civil rights activists and their fight for desegregation. Students from Columbia, Orangeburg, and Greenville rose up and demanded equal rights. This aspect of South Carolina's upstate history is harder to see, although more than worth the search for it. To this day, the places that might have been a memorial to the difficulties endured by the disenfranchised citizens of Greenville County have been lost to time. But the voices and written remembrances remain where locals can find them with a little assistance. The segregated library used to sit on East McBee Avenue, while the main branch of the Greenville Library sat on North Main Street. The main branch closed during the process of desegregation and was reopened as an integrated library for all. Behind me today is the Hughes Main Library. It's the main branch of the Greenville County Library System, and while it's not the original building, as you can imagine given the modern architecture, this structure was built in 2002 to support the ever-growing community needs and resources. The new library building now stands here on Heritage Greenpoint and contains the archival collection that contains newspapers, clippings, and books relevant to the legacy of the individuals who made this future possible, the Greenville 8. The original main branch of the library, the site of the many sit-in protests, stood between Main Street and Brown Street in the Jervey Jordan building until this building was established. The importance of this institution to Greenville's history lies in its impact on the civil rights movement of upstate South Carolina. It was at the main branch that the Greenville 8 would make their stand for equality. Behind me at the Hughes Main Library is the South Carolina Room, a room where archivists, librarians, and local historians work to keep our memories alive. Memories of the Greenville 8 can be found here. The Greenville 8, a group of protesters who were supported and educated by civil rights activists and teachers in their community. They protested in order to bring attention to the idea of integrated libraries on July 16th of 1960. The legendary group consisted of characters such as Reverend Jesse Jackson and Dr. Marjorie C. Wright Crosby. They would later make their names in the academic, political, and activist worlds outside of Greenville. Other members included Doris D.D. Wright, Willie Joe Wright, Benjamin Downs, Joan Madison Daniels, Hattie Smith, and Elaine Means. Their futures and the success of the ideals they worked toward were due to the courage, creativity, and commitment seen in the protest that would give them the name the Greenville 8. Their focus on library integration came from the indignity suffered by the segregated Black populations through the separate but equal policy as defined in Plessy v. Ferguson. This policy kept institutions of learning divided and resulted in certain resources being kept out of the hands of the disenfranchised. It was student Jesse Jackson that discovered this during his first year of college. The young man in question had tried to check out a book from the main branch of the library as the segregated branch on East McBee Avenue lacked the same resources as the whites-only library. Jackson was unable to check out the book and was requested to leave. This incident stayed in his mind, and that moment would lead to the July 16th protest. The 40th anniversary of the Greenville 8's protest was in 2020. To celebrate this protest and the effects that it brought about on our community, 3 members of the Greenville 8 were brought together. Those members were Joan Madison Daniels, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Doris D.D. Wright. The activists agreed that their actions were the catalyst to the integration of upstate South Carolina. Reflections passed from their namesake protest to the then current Black Lives Matter movement. It was agreed upon by all, however, that while there was much accomplished in the way of equality since 1960, there was still much left to do. The reality of the nation's steeped racism escaped the minds of the then teenagers. However, when faced with the modern civil rights activity, Reverend Jackson appealed to the new generation to keep on dreaming. The legacy of the Greenville 8 is memorialized in newspapers, autobiographies, statues, oral histories, and journals. While it is a predominantly written history, it is still fresh in the minds of those who lived through these events. Efforts to further preserve this legacy and event for generations of activists to come can be undertaken through community effort. Those voices, left behind in the wake of powerhouses like Reverend Jackson and Dr. Crosby, can be documented by oral historians willing to pick up the pieces and record the personal narratives. There are images of the libraries, arrests, and protests in action held in collections at both the Upcountry History Museum on my right and the South Carolina Research Room in the Greenville Library on my left. They provide visual aid for scholars and researchers and development of the Greenville Library system and sit-ins. The reality of this movement, the Greenville 8th sit-in, is a successful one. The libraries were desegregated. All individuals were allowed to study and given access to books and information, defying the obsolete idea of separate but equal. The most profound form of preservation for this event is the simple integration of the library system that continues to this day. Without the efforts of local historians, library staff, and archivists, the history of Greenville 8 and much of Greenville's civil rights heritage would not have survived to this day. Newspapers, carefully reporting on the activities and events of the past, are common enough to be considered throwaways or recyclable elements of life. The preservation of clippings and pictures printed over 40 years ago helps reconstruct the truth of what happened today. They highlight biases and contemporary societal aspects that dominated the racially charged time. Preserving the past can start as simply as maintaining records, taking photos, clipping articles relevant to places, events, and people. In working with these materials, seeing what was preserved, it is evident that anyone can make a difference in protecting their local history. Here we can see the memorial statue for our local civil rights heroes. The student protests surrounding the Greenville 8 are commemorated here in the Sterling High Student Statue Memorial. It resides on the corner of Main Street and Washington Street in downtown Greenville. The location was chosen due to the proximity to where Woolworth's lunch counter originally stood. Where Woolworth's was often a target of sit-ins enacted by the Sterling High School students. One such protest was staged as a demonstration of the students' dissatisfaction with the legal proceedings regarding the Greenville 8's trial. The statue was erected on November 19, 2006, and bears a plaque commemorating the civil rights activism undertaken by both students and teachers of Sterling High School. Sterling High School can boast alumni such as Reverend Jesse Jackson, Benjamin Downs, and Dr. Marjorie C. Wright Crosby, all three of which were individuals who helped in the Greenville 8 protest. While many newspapers credit the Greenville 8 students as belonging to Sterling High, many of them had already graduated and were in their first year of college at various institutions, both in-state and out-state. The location was deliberately chosen to interact with the past. This intersection of past and present is key to keeping the public informed of their history. Without acknowledging the locations, individuals, and events that shape the present, it is easy to forget about the struggles that existed. The commemoration of the statue further emphasized the impact of students who came out of that high school by involving one of the late Sterling High School teachers in the commemoration process. When the statue was erected, the small brick wall that surrounds it had the first brick laid by late teacher Wilfred Walker. The Greenville 8 have lived long and successful lives since their sit-in protest in 1960. In the years since their life-altering event, some of them have passed on. Both Willie Joe Wright and Dr. Marjorie C. Wright Crosby have passed away. However, Dr. Crosby's life in particular shows just how much the activism of their youth impacted both the future of the integrated South and their own personal development. One accomplishment that showcases just how much she made history was her position as a retired professor emerita at Clemson University. In 1985, a mere 8 years after her appointment as assistant professor of reading and language arts, she managed to retire as a full tenured professor emerita. This impressive achievement was not all that she accomplished, although it is made even more impressive by the fact that Dr. Crosby was the first Black female professor to gain tenure appointed at Clemson. Her long-standing activism did not end there in her youth. Dr. Crosby continued to champion the people's causes through her work on the board of directors for the Greenville Hospital System and as an ambassador for cancer awareness. Dr. Crosby noted in past interviews that she was very pleased with her life. Still living members include Reverend Jesse Jackson, Doris D.D. Wright, Benjamin Downs, Joan Madison Daniels, Hattie Smith, and Elaine Means. A vocal activist, Reverend Jackson's life shows some great success and growth in the field of politics, civil rights, and spirituality. After the Greenville 8 sit-in, he continued to strive toward equality. With his efforts with the Rainbow Coalition and eventually 2 presidential campaigns, Jesse Jackson strived for equality, excellence, and Black rights. Jackson ran for president both in 1984 and 1988, and despite his lack of success, The campaign he ran was a historic event. He ran through the Democratic Party and managed to win a statewide primary, the first Black presidential nominee to do so. His campaigns helped continue the Afro-American historical legacy of setting the moral and progressive agenda for U.S. society. Jackson mobilized factions of whites, Latinos, and Blacks in what would be a stunning and previously unheard of political movement. Their lives have made an impact on hundreds of people, thousands of people, both in and around the Greenville community.